Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, a special report on the arrest and indictment of Speaker of the House, Mike Hubbard. Also, the V team will offer analysis of the indictments and the political fallout. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V.
The Voice of Alabama Politics with your host, Bill Brett, and the V team with Claire Austin, Susan Britt, Jack Campbell, Baron Coleman, Charlana Spencer, and special reports with Jonathan Barbie. Now, the #1 political show in Alabama, The V.
Welcome to the Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V team.
Good morning.
Today, we have a special report on the arrest and indictment of Speaker of the House, Mike Hubbard. He is charged with 23 counts, felony charges. Baron, what do you say?
Well, I don't think it will come as a surprise to anyone. Well, first, let me apologize for my voice. I'm losing my voice. I don't think it'll come as a surprise to anyone who is a regular reader of alreporter.com or a regular viewer of the Voice of Alabama Politics. These are things we've been covering for a long time now. I think the rest of the folks around the state may be a little shocked to wake up and learn this. But 23 felony counts over the course of 4 years. I mean, just on its surface, that is an average of 1 felony count every 8 weeks.
Wow.
And that's just systematic corruption.
Egregious, as I would say.
If it proves to be true. It is sustained, it's systematic, and there's a pattern of criminal conduct there if this all turns out to be true.
Claire, there's some very big names mentioned along with Mr. Hubbard in the indictments. It goes right to the top echelon of Alabama businesses and leaders, former political leaders, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, you know, he was the chairman of the Alabama GOP. He was the money-raising man, 150 grand from everybody. And he swooned all these people in, and he's had close contacts with a lot of people. And, of course, he's been extremely close with the head of the Business Council of Alabama.
Speaking of that, Billy Canary is named, the head of the BCA. Bob Riley, the former governor, is named. Jimmy Rain, who's the yellow fella. These are top-tier people, aren't they?
They are. They have not. None of them have been indicted, but they were named in his indictments as people who gave him a thing of value, or he accepted a thing of value from these folks. I think it presents some major problems. If you look at all the indictments, I'm not a lawyer, so we pay people like Baron for, but all of them are tied to making money while in office, and that has clearly been against the law in Alabama for time in memoriam. So,
you know,
I think
serious.
it's very big problems for him.
And, you know, it's unfortunate for Alabama. It puts a bad black eye on the state of Alabama.
It does. It does.
Well, when you look at the handshake with Alabama, the pledge they all signed in 2010, we're going to clean up corruption. It's going to be a different climate. It's no different. It could be worse.
Baron, one of the things that he is charged with is using his office for personal gain. And that's part of the new ethics law that was passed by the Republicans in 2010. It says that you cannot give a thing of value, or you cannot receive a thing of value. So it's two parts. You can't receive one, and you can't give one. Mike is charged with receiving lots of things of value, including contracts and cash.
I think 11 of the counts, if I remember correctly, were about receiving a thing of value. And the thing that most people don't understand is I'm hearing a lot of political commentary on the radio, in the newspaper, just in talking with people, and they're not seeing the quid pro quo in these indictments. And that's because it's not there. These are not quid pro quo indictments. Right. They're almost strict liability indictments. The statute is very, very clear. You cannot give anything of value, anything, period. There's no exception. There's no, well, I've known this guy a long time. Well, it's my business. There's no exception. Right. If you take a thing of value from a lobbyist, a principal, or somebody like that, then it's over. That's that's the test.
It's a Class B felony.
And by corollary, it's also a Class B felony to give a thing of value. The giver is also. So the people named in the indictment one could make a legal conclusion that if those facts are true, they also committed crimes.
Well, the head of the biggest business organization and perhaps one of the most powerful men in Alabama is Billy Canary, BCA chairman. He is said in these indictments to have given Hubbard a thing of value. This could be a tarnish, some of the biggest businesses in our state, right? To have him
If
still on board.
I'm on the board of BCA, and I'm not, I would be certainly quizzing him about what he knew, what he did, who he did business with, what promises he made, what deals he cut. I would be very, very concerned.
And I would also have a lie detector test when I was asking that if I was on the board of BCA as well. And the sad thing is, so many of his board members at the BCA were mentioned in these
Will Brook,
indictments.
an old friend and a former candidate for Congress, was one of the people named in the indictments as.
So I think a lot of these people were probably hoodwinked by Canary.
And
Also, Jim Holbrook used to be the CEO of Stern Agee. And surprisingly, Bob Barton, who is the head of Hoare Construction. Hoare has that contract with Airbus. I mean, they're building that giant facility down there. I mean, these are enormous names in business.
Well, and it raises the question, were some of the, and we don't know from the indictment because they're very bare bones pleadings, but were some of these allegations of money changing hands that have anything to do with the recruitment of Airbus and the construction contracts? Robert Abrams, somebody you haven't mentioned yet, is mentioned in 4 or 5 different of the counts. They got a big $78 million loan from the retirement systems of Alabama. Was there some sort of a negotiation where Mike would profit somehow from that? We don't know the answer to that yet. There was one thing we haven't brought up yet, the 4 counts going back to the Alabama Republican Party.
Correct.
Mike Hubbard's chief defense in this is, and if you watch his little video statement, 2 weeks before an election, that means it's political. They had no choice but to indict 2 weeks before an election. There was a statute of limitations running out on those 4 counts from his time at the Alabama Republican Party. And as of October 21, they can't indict on those anymore.
And that is the...
That's important. I think that's an important fact for viewers and listeners to know that it was a timetable that the statutes would run out on the 21st.
And that's very important. That was the time when Mike used his office as being the chairman of the party to send money to Majority Strategies, who's also mentioned in the indictments, to Majority Strategies, and then funnel that money back to a business interest of his, Craftmaster Printers. And this is clearly, in my mind, I think that's embezzlement. I think it's a very simple charge. But
they didn't charge embezzlement.
They didn't, but the statute was running out on that.
The statute was running. There's a 4-year statute. And maybe the reason they didn't charge embezzlement, because that's a 3-year statute of limitations, they'd had to get that before October last year.
Right.
The ethics charges is a 4-year statute of limitations on those charges. And so they charge him under the ethics thing. The key is, the reason it falls under the ethics code, even though he was the chairman of the Republican Party and not any public official, well, the chairman of the Republican Party and the Democrat Party are public officials under the ethics code.
Correct.
Right.
That's correct.
And if this were a political deal, these indictments would have come out in April because Mike had a much stronger opponent in the primary than he has in the general election.
Right.
Absolutely.
That is a very valid and good point, Jeff.
Well, every time one of these guys, whether it be Democrat, Republican, whoever, every time they get popped, they cry political prosecution.
And one reporter asked him, who's conducting the witch hunt? And they really couldn't say to satisfy me anyway.
Well,
it's just they've trumped it up.
Yeah,
but the point is, if it was a Democrat attorney general, maybe they could have said it was a witch hunt. But the bottom line is, it's a Republican attorney general, and these Republicans, and they're following the rule of law. No matter if you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent, if you're doing wrong, prosecute them.
Well, and we're going to have to leave it right there. But you're watching a special report of the V. When we come back, we're going to discuss the political fallout of Hubbard's indictment. Special report. Stay tuned.
The V is sponsored by Spot On Strategies Group.
I teach. I touch the future. I am AEA.
I keep the school clean every day for your children. I am AEA.
Congratulations on your scholarship. I help children make choices for college and careers. I am AEA.
We are AEA. Welcome to Alabama's newest entertainment destination, Wind Creek, Wetumpka. The perfect escape for date night, a getaway with your friends, or a relaxing poolside cocktail. Whether it's a day trip to enjoy the best steak in Alabama or a romantic weekend, the finest Southern hospitality is just a short drive away. Wind Creek, Wetumpka. Find your winning moment.
Welcome back to the Voice of Alabama Politics, where today we're having a special report on the arrest and indictment of Speaker of the House, Mike Hubbard. One of the things that has happened is Mike and his attorney, J. Mark White, have sought to spin this arrest as if it is a political witch hunt. Claire, what do you think about this?
Well, you know, you hire some of these showboat lawyers, and what they do is they want to take the case to the media as opposed to the courtroom, because they know they can't win this in the courtroom, so they're trying to win it in the media and convince people differently. And it's a shame. The things that they had prepackaged, knowing what was coming, they've been knowing this clearly by the fact that he posted bond on a Friday afternoon and he wasn't indicted till Monday.
Right.
They had plenty of time to get their PR spin ready, and they definitely did that.
Some of the media has been complicit, I think. Don't you, Jack?
Well, if you look at the AL.com report this morning or last week actually, by Chuck Dean, the
Editorial editor?
Yeah, who said there were 40 members of the legislature standing at his side. We had somebody over there, there were 15.
Yeah.
I watched it live, so they need to
Where did he get
count
that number?
Maybe
There
he
weren't
needs
even 40 people on the stage. There were 36 or 38 people on the stage. There were a lot of people that had no connection whatsoever with the Alabama House of Representatives. There were 15 people. We can name them by name. They were all there. Some of them skipped meetings on Ebola and enterovirus preparedness, as you reported, in order to be there. But it was a shameful moment. I've never been less proud to be associated with the Republican Party than I was in that moment. That there would be Republican members of the House of Representatives standing behind an accused felon and cheerleading and amening and high-fiving and clapping.
The
It was a
same guy that
disgrace.
4 years ago when the bingo indictments came down Mike was out there saying, you know,
They're guilty of sin.
Yeah, I mean,
they're
basically
guilty
is
of
what he
sin.
was saying.
Well, it's been very disappointing all the way around. The chairman of the party said he hopes Mike doesn't get convicted.
Well, I mean,
hey, that's his job. Okay, you know, I wouldn't say it was the most embarrassing moment as being a Republican. I'm a Republican. Was it embarrassing? I would say for the Republican leadership in the Alabama House of Representatives. I wouldn't put all across with a big brush Republicans, because I've had a lot of comments and emails back and forth for people on the steering committee, and they're ready to throw them all out.
Well, let me bring this up. Representative Mike Rogers, a sitting U.S. representative, was down there in Hubbard's defense. He said of the sitting Republican Attorney General, Luther Strange, that he was practicing Chicago-style gutter politics. Claire, your word, egregious. How
It
can
is
he do
egregious,
that?
and I'm embarrassed for Mike Rogers that he would stoop that low and do something like that. He certainly owes the Attorney General an apology for that, and that's just a bad taste.
Have you ever heard of such a thing in Republican politics?
I haven't. It's a lot of backbiting. Or, you know, it's a circular firing squad right now. But the problem is, where are all the people that are saying, Mike Hubbard, you need to step aside as Speaker until this is resolved. You can keep your seat. You can run for re-election. Get out of the way. This is dragging the party through the mud.
That's right.
And he's so arrogant and uncaring that he stands there and digs his heels in.
What's wrong with the party, Barron, that they won't stand up to this bully?
Look, it's the same complaint Jack and I had on our radio show one day. We had a Muslim expert in, and I said, where are the moderate Muslims standing up and saying, these terrorists are not practicing our true faith, get them away, they're discredited? Where are the Republicans standing up saying, these are not true Republicans, these guys don't have the best interest of the party at heart, these guys are running scared, I don't know whether they were threatened to be on that stage or not, but anybody right now standing with Mike Hubbard, cheerleading him, is an embarrassment and a disgrace to the Republican Party. I'm sorry.
And they're up there making jokes at the press conference, calling this our no-huddle offense and ha, 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 ha. This is a serious matter. 23 counts?
I mean,
That's very
it's
serious.
disgraceful, some of those people there. Mac McCutcheon was mentioned as a possible successor to Mike if Mike was indicted.
I don't
Mac
see that
McCutcheon
happening now.
was right there in the middle of it,
No,
wasn't
he's
he,
part of the
Claire?
Ringling Brothers circus that was over there.
Yeah, and I go back again. Not only is it bad for it's just a bad black eye for the state of Alabama. And if you're at a company thinking about coming to Alabama and you see all this craziness and corruption going on, you're going to go somewhere else.
And there's a contrast. You can issue a polite statement saying, look, Mike Hubbard is a colleague and friend of mine. He's innocent until proven guilty. You know, I'll support him and his family, and they'll be in our prayers.
Which is basically what Cam Ward and the governor did.
It's a totally another thing to be standing on a stage cheerleading the guy. Do you get on the stage and cheerlead other felons that are accused? Child rapists, murderers, drug dealers? No. And if you wouldn't be on the stage with them, get the hell off the stage with Mike Hubbard.
Well, and I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, you know, we have followed this case. I mean, we have investigated Mike Hubbard for the last 2 years, and now this has come to pass that he has been indicted, and it's just shocking that the party of law and order has become the party of the lawless.
And complicity.
Yeah, it's a sad day.
Well,
for our state.
I hope that Mike Rogers does give an apology to the Attorney General.
Amen.
Because he is way out of line by what he has said about Attorney General Luther Strange.
Oh, no question.
How does this affect the Attorney General's race, just to change the subject here a bit?
I don't think anybody knows yet. I mean, it's been, 4 or 5 days since this has happened. I don't think anybody yet knows how this is impacting it, and it's so close to the election we won't know.
Well, we'll see a lot of commercials. There was a commercial that Mike had ready before he was even indicted, and let's just take a short listen to it.
Friends, if there was any doubt in anyone's mind that this was nothing but a political witch hunt, I think that it's pretty clear right now that that's exactly what it is. It's been going on for 2 years, dragging on, and here they come 2 weeks before an election and make these allegations.
So there you have it. He's wearing the same suit and tie that he wore at 4:30 or 4:28 when he turned himself in. This was clearly shot before 4:28. What do you make of that kind of spin?
It was prepackaged, pre-planned, and it was like the Chuck Dean article. I think the Chuck Dean article was written maybe even with the help of Mike Hubbard and Mark White ahead of time. He anticipated 40 people standing up there, which is why Chuck said 40. I think he anticipated this was going to come. He knew what the charges were. This was all prepackaged. They're just running, a PR campaign.
And he mentioned, remember, I mean, he posted his bond on Friday. He wasn't indicted till Monday, so there's no question they knew it. And I'm back to my same point: is Mark White's the type of lawyer who takes it to the media and not to the courtroom, because that's where he wants to try to win it, in the media, instead of doing the right thing in the courtroom.
Well, there's a lot of people ask, why was not Speaker Hubbard arrested like, say, a Harry Ann Smith was, or Sue Schmidt, who was arrested in her bathroom? Why did he get the comfort of turning himself in? What we have been told, and we have not been able to verify this fact, is that this was not an operation of the Attorney General's office, but was an operation of the Lee County Sheriff's Department.
You mean the same Lee County Sheriff that's been appearing in his campaign commercial?
Said that he's the most honest man he's ever known.
Yeah,
Shameful.
Everybody thinks the world of Jay Jones, the sheriff down there. How does he recover from saying that a man who's been charged with 23 felony counts of public corruption, how does he come back from saying, oh, he's the most honest guy I know?
He's going to have a lot of, as Ricky Ricardo said, a lot of explaining to do on that one, because, I mean, he's been in direct mail pieces, I understand, that have been sent out in the district saying, Mike Hubbard's an honorable man and all that. Well, fine, but I just think that you, as a law enforcement officer, ought to keep your mouth shut in a situation like this.
Well, it is politically toxic for a lot of people right now. It's going to be interesting to see how this falls out. Will this affect the race statewide at all?
No.
Well, you know, my hunch is it might hurt some House Republican members that have general opponents. Because, and particularly if they were any one of the 15 up there on the stage, but any House Republican that's been under the leadership of Mike Hubbard and done exactly what he's told them to do for the last 4 years, and that's what you've had to do or your heads would get rolled, those people may be in a situation where they lose 2 or 3 points and they may lose the general election because of that.
All right, we're going to have to hold it right there. You're watching a special report of the V concerning the indictment and arrest of Speaker Mike Hubbard. We'll be right back with more analysis.
The V is sponsored by MediaWorks Communications, quality video production and marketing services. The Locker Room, fine men's clothing.
I make sure to get your kids to school and home safe every day. I am AEA.
I make sure your child receives a healthy meal each day. I am AEA.
Thank you, AEA, for protecting our public schools and our futures. We are AEA.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. Today is a special report on the arrest and indictment of Mike Hubbard, Speaker of the Alabama House. We're joined now by Susan Britt.
Hello,
by
all.
Charlana Spencer.
Well, you've got a harem here this morning.
I do. It should be called...
Like the three backup singers.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We're all three blonde, right?
It should be called Bill and the Blondes, you know. There was Tony, Orlando, and Dawn, but there was two of them.
I think I heard some laughter out of the control room.
There's a lot of blonde right there.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of estrogen, but I'm happy with it.
Okay, let's talk about our friend from Lee County. How about that?
Well, one of the things we want to talk about here is this process. And, you know, how does a grand jury come about handing down indictments? What is the mechanics of how this works? Can you help us with that?
I can. We talked a little bit about this last weekend. You know, you can get a report as a prosecutor from any number of sources, whether it be from journalists like y'all, from citizens who make a complaint, from their own investigations, that sort of thing. And then it goes to, the prosecutor then takes it to the judge and asks for a grand jury or a special grand jury to be impaneled like they were in this case over in Lee County. The next thing after that, you see all of the witnesses and the evidence and the testimony is presented to the grand jury. The prosecutors make one wrap-up. They present the counts or the complaints to the grand jury. They vote on those, and then they're presented in an indictment, and the judge signs off on it. The next thing I think we can expect to see in this process, you know, Mr. Hubbard was booked. Mark White has made no secret that he intends to fight it, and I expect the first thing we will see out of the gate will be a motion to dismiss or a bill of particulars. The indictment does not have dates and times, and I think that's important because the defense attorneys, like I am, can't file a motion to dismiss on the basis of a statute of limitations. So they're looking for what defenses they have, how they can poke holes in the indictment, and that's the first thing I think we can expect to see. I also think we can expect to see another challenge to the authority of the grand jury and to the prosecutors. The Alabama Supreme Court has spoken on this twice and said they have the authority in two other cases that were related to this Lee County grand jury. But I would expect that Mark White and his team of attorneys will try another avenue this go around.
Just to play politics, right? Just to kind of deflate.
Well, not really politics. I mean, it's more from, as a defense attorney, what are all of the arrows that I have in my quiver?
Well, Mark White said so in the press conference yesterday when they were having the press conference from Mike, that they were going to go back and look at that grand jury again.
Well, I think that's really, I mean, it's already been struck down twice.
Right.
I mean, Roy Moore's court doesn't seem to be buying White's argument, whether it's coming from White or coming from Bill Baxley, does he?
Right. I mean, they're just grasping at straws. They're delaying the inevitable. But like you said, whatever's in their pocket, they got to throw it out and try to use it.
And it's not necessarily a delay because that won't necessarily slow up the process. And you can say that the Roy Moore's court has struck it down already, but they've struck down the only two arguments that were identical that were presented to them. And so I would expect that we can see Mark White and his team pulling out all the stops and trying to find every potential challenge to this grand jury.
You know, one of the things that Charlana said, and we know very well because Susan and I have been investigative reporters and investigated this thing more than anybody in the world, I guess, talked about the process of how law enforcement and reporters can work together and never meet or never talk to each other.
Well, an important element of journalism is to do your research. And when you do your research, to take the documentation that you've got to show that and make it public. Because not everybody's got time to go dig around in databases and financial records and all of that. So by a reporter seeing a story, seeing what they think is a crime, and then publishing that along with the evidence, that makes it easy for an investigator to go in, read the article like everybody else, and make a decision about whether that's illegal or not.
You know, you've seen this before, where reporters and law enforcement have worked together to bring about some major conviction.
Well, you know, a lot of times the investigators and the particular officers don't necessarily want to do it, but if somebody digs it up and puts it on a platform, they have to do it. Yes, we have seen this more than once in Alabama. That's kind of been the pattern in practice for the most part, but not on this, not on the bingo stuff, but other things.
Yeah, I don't think Luther necessarily was happy about having to do this, but he did do it, right?
He did, and that's his job as the chief law enforcement officer. If you are presented with credible evidence, then your office has no choice but to investigate it and to prosecute it. And then the court system will decide whether or not there has been a crime or whether or not there are allegations just short of that.
Let me ask you one other thing. Is it, I mean, they're going to bring in a whole team of attorneys for Mike Hubbard, aren't they? I mean, they'll just bring in a bunch of folks, right? I mean,
absolutely.
This is not a one-man operation.
No, no. And I've worked with Mark White and his firm, and they're great people. They're great lawyers. I would expect that there will be a number of lawyers from his office who will work on this case, who have been working on in the background. You know, this is something that's been going on for quite some time now. And so when everything happened this past Monday, they had a game plan.
Right.
And they executed the game plan.
And I'm going to disagree with you on that. He's a great lawyer. He doesn't think much of me, and I don't think that highly of him.
Well,
but that's
everybody is entitled to their opinions.
And we know the Speaker of the House has spent a boatload of money on paying legal charges to these lawyers.
Well, in addition to lawyers, I think what you'll see in this case is you will have public relations firms who will be brought in or who have been brought in.
They've already been brought in, it appears.
You'll see jury consultants who will be brought in to start going into the community and doing a bunch of, not polling, but public research. You know, what is the sentiment? How do we present our case? They'll probably bring in mock juries.
Like what Richard Scrushy did in Birmingham.
Absolutely.
Well, Barry Moore has already hired a jury consultant and paid for it out of his campaign funds.
But
I mean, that happened last week.
Susan, isn't this go to the point that there's a different justice system for the rich than there is for the poor? I mean,
amen.
Well,
I agree to that.
The justice system is the same, but it's sort of like a wedding. I mean, it's all in what you can afford, and if you can afford to bring in the jury consultants and the political folks to advise you and the public relations people and the 3 law firms and that sort of thing, then you may very well get
a $20,000 win versus a $150,000 win.
I mean, not everybody can afford that.
We're going to have to hold it right there. You've been watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. You can catch fresh news stories every day at alreporter.com and catch us every Sunday on your ABC affiliate throughout the state. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend.